Hey everyone, sorry for the delay in putting this episode out. I've been working and traveling. I'm finally back home in my home state of Tennessee for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So, pretty excited about that. Found myself some spare time here today, so finally got around to putting this episode out. It was a really good one. Had an awesome conversation with Dan Taxation is Theft Behrman. We talked about taxation, as you might expect, but we also talked about ending the drug war, and we talked about his brand of wine that he's coming out with that I ordered a bottle of and would highly recommend. Blood of Tyrants .wine. You can go get you a bottle there. But with that, here's my conversation with Dan Behrman. All right, I think we're good. Dan Behrman, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And I'm really excited to have you on. I think the first time I learned about who you were was back when you were running for president in 2020, and you had the big yellow hat that said taxation is theft. Man, that hat is iconic. There's no mistaking. When you see that big yellow hat, you know exactly who it is. Just the whole. Your whole aesthetic during that campaign was fucking awesome, man. I have to say, it was really great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Where did you get the idea for that hat, and where did you get the hat from?
Oh, so it was. I know the Libertarian Party itself has been kind of like a contentious topic of conversation for the last few years, but I kind of joined like around or learned about them and started supporting them around 2014. And by 2016, I was helping McAfee on his campaign. And of course, Gary Johnson won the election. And I like when I came looking for the Libertarian Party, like my big issue was taxes, especially income tax. I fought with the IRS. And I saw that this was like the biggest issue. Like all these libertarians were talking about the wars and the Federal Reserve and all these other things. And I was like, guys, like the income tax is what's paying for all this stuff, the drug war, everything. And nobody seemed to care about that. They were all focused on these other issues. So around 2016, Gary Johnson got elected, and he was kind of like, tax. He was pushing for the flat tax, and he's definitely not an anti-tax guy. And so 2018, when I went back to the Libertarian National Convention, I was like, okay, I need to kind of let it be known that this is the party of taxation is theft. And so I set up a table. I had taxation is theft everything, t-shirts, hats, and everything else. And I was like, okay, what can I do to top this off? And I kept just trying to one up myself. We put out like a yellow carpet, like a red carpet. We had a big backdrop that said taxation is theft all over it. And then I was like, okay, what else can I do? And then I found this hat, and I was like, I gotta turn that into a taxation is theft hat. So, that's kind of the story of it. And yeah, it was an interesting experience because, before my participation in the party was kind of minimal. Nobody really knew who I was. And of course, walking around the convention with that big hat on, everybody was like, hey, that's an awesome hat. And it was just really, really great time. And then the funny thing is, as soon as I took the hat off and started walking around, it was like nobody even recognized me or saw me. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, that was kind of it. And I know I don't know. It seems like other people have kind of come in and tried to mark the Libertarian Party in a different way. So and I know it's kind of been like the basis for a lot of infighting that's been going on. But that's still my main issue, and that's kind of the one I like to push for.
Yeah, well, if you were looking to make an impression and do something memorable with that hat and your whole look, I mean, you definitely did. I think, I think I saw your Twitter account again for the first time in a while back when I did the episode with Tom Queter, who you know pretty well too. And I saw I think that you had liked one of the tweets or something, and I was like, is that the taxation is theft yellow hat guy? It definitely was. So I mean that's something that's been like burned into my head pretty much ever since I saw it. So if you were looking to make a mark, you definitely did.
Awesome.
But how long have you been involved with politics generally? I know you said when you became involved with like the Libertarian Party. Have you always been involved in politics, or is
No, I mean, until I was, I don't know, in my I don't know, for the longest time, I just absolutely hated politics. I thought it was boring. I thought I was like, yeah, whatever. You got people elected; they'll deal with all the problems. I don't need to pay attention to any of this stuff. And it was around like the 2008 housing crisis and market crash and everything, where I was kind of like, what the hell's going on here? And I was really getting sick of like the whole Afghanistan war and everything at that point. So, of course, I thought Obama was anti-war, so I voted for him in 2008. Big mistake. And it was weird because shortly after that, I started seeing like some cars driving around with this, who is Ron Paul stickers on it. And I started looking into Ron Paul around that time and really got into that. And that was probably around where I first started getting interested. The first time I ran for any office was, I want to say around 2014, maybe 2015, where I ran, I think it was 2014, where I ran for the Texas House of Representatives. And that was a really awesome experience. And from there, I just kind of like been trying to figure out like, okay, we're working with the Libertarian Party, which is, it's a small party. Not a whole lot of people know about it. And those who do don't have a whole lot of faith that they can get people elected. And I was like, my thing is always trying to figure out how can we actually change society to where people can be more free, and what's it actually going to take. So yeah, it's just been a constantly evolving path of what my involvement is and how I'm working with organizations and what I'm actually trying to do to change it. But it's been a long journey. But yeah, I would totally love to get back to that point where I don't have anything to do with politics, because it's it's a nightmare. It's like stuff you don't want to have to deal with, but at the same time, it's like like once you kind of open your eyes to what's really going on and what people are doing to rob all of us, it's like you can't just sit around and let it happen. You got to do whatever you can.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Is like once you get involved and like once you open your eyes to everything that's going on, you can't just, I mean, I guess you can. It's really hard to just like close your eyes and pretend that none of the stuff that you've been made aware of is happening. Like once you get involved, it's really hard to get back out of it. It always kind of ropes you back in.
Right.
There's always just there's always different shit going on. And it's interesting you say that seeing the Ron Paul bumper stickers is kind of what got your attention. I have a kind of a weirder version of that. I was at some sporting event. I was pretty young at the time. I can't remember exactly what it was, maybe a football game or something like that. And there was, I went to use the restroom at this sporting venue, and I walked in and there was a guy just standing there in the bathroom handing out Ron Paul pamphlets. Nice. Like right by where you would dry your hands, there was a guy who was just like, "Oh, you should look into Ron Paul," and that was his thing, which is, I gotta
awesome.
say it's a little weird, but it's not a bad move, because you go to a sporting venue, you're drinking, you're doing this and that. I mean, you're gonna have to go to the bathroom at some point. So you go into the bathroom, you kind of, they can't really avoid you. They've got, I guess they don't have to wash their hands, but they should, like they're kind of trapped. Like they have to interact with you in some way. So I thought it was very strange at the time, and it definitely was. I wouldn't recommend it to, probably wouldn't anyway. It's just a little odd, but.
Well, that's really interesting, because like, it's like, how like something can happen, and if you don't really make like a big deal out of it, you'll totally forget it. It's like somebody could be at the mall just handing those things out, and people would throw them in the trash, and like maybe you'd never like ever think about it again. But now it's like you got this story, and it's like, yeah, it was so weird. This guy was in the bathroom handing out flyers, and it's like you're going to tell everybody about that just because it happened and it was weird.
Yeah, and see, that
Um,
was well over, like a decade ago, and it's something that I distinctly remember, and it was the first time that I had ever really, heard about Ron Paul or the Libertarian Party. So, I mean, that guy, I mean, he definitely made an impression. I'm talking about him on my podcast, so it
yeah,
worked. And
a decade later.
yeah, it took me a while. I took some different ideological twists and turns on the way to becoming a libertarian, but I did eventually get there. You said you ran for state house back in 2014. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like District 125.
Yeah,
Is that? And I know they've done some different things with the district, but that district is in San Antonio, which is where I live. What was your experience like running for state house? Was that the first race you ran for?
yeah, it was. And interestingly enough, like at that time, it was LP Texas was really just trying to like fill up the ballot with anybody who would run. It wasn't really about running real campaigns. It was like, hey, can we put your name on the ballot, because we just want to have a name in every single slot. And at first I even resisted that. I was like, I don't really want to do that. They twisted my arm, they talked me into it, and then after a few weeks of filling out the paperwork and doing all that kind of stuff, I was just kind of like, you know what, I actually have an opportunity here to like really change some things. So let me actually turn this into an active campaign. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, it was a total it was a crazy experience. Talking to so many people, learning just because I had my, I guess, political biases and what I thought was a perfect plan for everybody and perfect messaging and everything, and then you get out there and you talk to people and you realize like everybody's got different needs, and even if the best thing for them is smaller government, as far as messaging and figuring out how do you actually relate to them in a way that they'll say like, oh yeah, my issue is I can't afford my healthcare. Well, okay, how does small government solve that for them, and how do you relate that and message them? So there was a lot of learning in there, and it was really interesting too, just meeting a lot of other personalities. I mean, I ran into a few cops who were my main platform at that time was ending the drug war and stopping police misconduct, and I ran into a few cops, and they were clearly pro police misconduct, which was just so weird. It was like they were we wanted to stop police misconduct, and and I get it, because you can say like, oh, there's what are you trying to say? Should we get rid of all the police? And they would kind of take it to that extreme, and then they would go to the opposite and say like, no, almost short of saying we want police misconduct, they would go and try to justify it. So it was really kind of interesting to see that side of people also. But yeah, it was a really awesome experience, and that kind of, I think, gave me a little bit of hope that I could have some sort of activism that would actually get out there and help people change their minds, which would ultimately change the shape of the government.
Yeah, man, that's that's really awesome. I mentioned it before we started recording, but I just wrapped up talking to Sam Robb, who you know well, and of course we talked a little bit about his run for president in 2020, and you ran as well. And I'm just curious because he talked a little bit about his experiences and how it was for him. What was running for president in 2020 like for you?
It was interesting. It was a little bit rough because I mean, first, we kind of have everybody in the party, in the Libertarian Party, who kind of, they look at the two-party system. They hate the fact that the Democrats and the Republicans kind of run everything, and they're top-down parties. They typically talk about how top-down systems don't work. We need decentralization. We need, all these different types of things. But then what was strange was what I was trying to do with the campaign was to say, hey, look, obviously everybody who's involved with this party is going to vote Libertarian anyway. So let's forget about, traveling around the country, going to Libertarian conventions and wasting all of our money just talking to the echo chamber. And so what we did is we took all the money that we raised and we used it on advertising outside of the party. So we were reaching Trumpsters. Mostly we were really going towards the left, because the left, the Trumpsters were already sold on Trump. He's already, he's he was kind of a hard guy to run against. But what we were trying to do is get a lot of the left support. Because, basically Trump was kind of going out, he's getting a lot of the people who were already kind of libertarian, right? With, he's going to be pro Second Amendment and small government, small taxes, that kind of stuff. So, when you're running against a billionaire and that's kind of your platform, it's like, that's a little bit tough. But so what we were trying to do is really connect with a lot of the left, and just, people in general, people who were not involved with the Libertarian Party at all. And we did a really amazing job with that. I mean, we reached millions of people. We changed minds. I mean, we got so much, we got emails from people saying like, yeah, I thought you were full of crap when I saw you say taxation is theft. And I tried to, come up with every argument I possibly could, and just, reading all your posts and everything, I finally came to the realization that taxation is theft. And it's like, so we got these like far left people to like realize taxation is theft, which is amazing. And then so the plan was to take this back to the party and say, hey, look, we've always struggled with messaging. We've always struggled with, how do we get people who are not libertarians? It's easy to get people who are libertarians, right? Because they're already they're already in line with our philosophy. But that's a small percentage of the population. We need to get everybody else. How do we get them? And so we had come up with a pretty good strategy to get these other people. And then we went back to the party and we were basically like, hey, look, this is what we've been able to accomplish. And the party was like, yeah, but you're saying things that aren't really the way that we would want to say them. And they don't make us feel good as libertarians. And so therefore we're going to elect the person who says like all the libertarian things the libertarian way. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but you realize that's not going to play well outside of the Libertarian Party, which is the biggest problem that you have to overcome. So so it was kind of like, it was almost like I was just working against a brick wall, where we were finding out the right way to do things, and then learning that the Libertarian Party really didn't appreciate the right way to do things, and they wanted to kind of stay in their echo chamber, and that sort of thing. So it was kind of difficult, and of course, that cost us the nomination. But at the same time, it kind of made me realize, like, this is the right way to do things, and we're, if the party's not going to align with us and help us out and support us in doing this, we're going to have to do this on our own. And, as we become successful, then hopefully the party's going to come back around and we'll be able to work together. But yeah, that was kind of a frustration. And I even started running for governor of Texas, and knowing what we knew, what we learned from the presidential run, and how we were going to run the gubernatorial campaign, it was kind of the same thing. It was like LP Texas was like, yeah, all the delegates were like, we want somebody who's going to tour around the state and come to our conventions and this and that. And I'm like, I have no interest in talking to libertarians. You guys are already going to vote libertarian. There's like, you can donate, tens of thousands of dollars to my campaign so I can come around and talk to you. But it's like, that's just going to make you feel good. It's not going to actually accomplish anything. And that's my thing. I want to accomplish something. I don't want to just make libertarians feel good about being libertarians. I want to actually change the world so that we can live in a libertarian society.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's like you said, people that are already libertarian are going to vote that way regardless, right? Like regardless of whether you go and host some big event with them or whatever. Like you like the Libertarian Party already has their vote. They're going to vote Libertarian, probably no matter what. It's these other people that are maybe opposed to, or maybe they just don't know, some of the Libertarian Party stances on stuff. I mean, those are the guys that you really need to go after, especially in a time like, in a time like this. Since 2016, I feel like more and more, people are just so disillusioned with the duopoly that exists. I mean,
yeah,
everyone is just sick of Democrats and Republicans alike at this point, but they feel trapped inside of the system. And so I think it's really awesome that you were reaching out to people that way. What are some of the issues that you found really resonated with some of those voters that you were talking to? I have to imagine, lower taxes. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to pay less in taxes? And like ending the drug war is probably another one that I have to imagine, really resonated with people. But yeah, I mean, yeah, what were some of the issues that you were pushing?
So interestingly enough, this is what we did was we went to like the actual, the big research firms, because we don't have millions of dollars to spend doing all the research. Mm-hmm. So we just went to go see what everybody else was coming up with, and we found the top 3 issues that Democrats were interested in, the top 3 interested that Republicans were interested in, and of those it was like it was like for the Democrats it was like healthcare and cost of living and things like that. So basically what we did is we just kind of took those and said like, hey, okay, healthcare, like how do we take a libertarian message and advertise this as healthcare to people? How do we get people's attention? And I started coming up with this idea of like, well, what if everything's free, right? Because I mean, that's kind of what they want, right? They want free universal healthcare and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay, so what if we take this idea and we say, okay, we're going to create this thing called free healthcare. And originally this was just like part of the platform, but we actually turned this into like a nonprofit organization now. But the idea of free healthcare is like, it's not free, like we're going to give you stuff. It's free as in freedom. But what's interesting about this is when the left hears it, they're like, oh, free healthcare. This sounds like an interesting plan, right? It's a competitor to Medicare for all or universal healthcare or something like that, right? But what we do is we actually like put forth the information, show them that, as much as these politicians are sitting around saying, hey, we want to give you this plan, like, no, it's really a scam. It's the free cheese and the mousetrap, right? And so we've taken a lot of these issues and we show them where the government has actually prevented people from helping who want to help, people who have millionaires who have lots of money who want to invest and build new hospitals. Wouldn't it be a good thing to have more hospitals? Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if all the healthcare is free if you don't have enough doctors, right? And the left totally gets that, right? They're like, yeah, more hospitals, more doctors, all that stuff would be great. Well, you have certificate of need laws in a lot of states that prevent people from building hospitals. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's terrible. We should get rid of that. Then you start talking about like all the doctors and nurses who have come here from other countries and how they're not able to work. Oh yeah, we should get rid of those regulations. Then we talk about how, the way the medical system is designed, you can have 1 million people graduate top of the class, 100% perfect exams and everything from med school, and they can't go to work as doctors because they actually have a physical cap on the number of doctors who can be certified every year. Oh yeah, we should get rid of that. And next thing you know, it's like they're like, oh yeah, we should get rid of all these regulations, and they start to understand like these regulations are in place to profit, the 1%, which is what they absolutely hate. And to really drive this point home, we talk about insulin, and I talk about how I've been smuggling insulin from Mexico into the United States because in Mexico it's like 90% less than it costs in the United States. I mean, the stuff costs like $5 to manufacture, and they're selling it here in the United States for $100 for an injection pen that's only $12 in Mexico. And it's not that it's a cheaper brand or anything else. In fact, it's the same brand that I bring from Mexico, which is Lantis, which is actually manufactured in Germany. And that same pen actually sells in Canada for $12 also. And so when all these people talk about like, oh, it's these greedy corporations, and that's why, healthcare is so high. And it's like, yeah, it's the greedy corporations, but those corporations are just as greedy in Mexico and Canada. Why aren't they charging $100 there? And the answer is they don't have the restrictions and the price controls that create a monopoly. And this is all done through the FDA and, denying other foreign companies from selling their medication in the United States, or denying them selling it in the United States under a certain price. And as soon as you start, explaining all this stuff to the left, which is, it's a pretty simple concept. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand it, or like a PhD in economics to understand it. People get it. It's very simple. And it's amazing how fast, somebody who was sitting there saying we need Medicare for all just turns around and says, yeah, sounds like we should get rid of the FDA. And it's like, hey, that's a great idea. So really it's like, it is. And this is one of those plans where I've had so many libertarians come to me and say, oh, there's no such thing as a free lunch, free healthcare. That's bullshit. That's a crap plan. You can't be running around pushing that. And it's like, but this is what's getting a lot of the left to come around, and not even to support me, to support the idea that we need to get rid of all this extra government regulation. Because ultimately, like, it doesn't matter if I get elected or some other libertarian, or if no libertarian ever gets elected. What matters is that the public starts to change their opinion of what they want, because ultimately, any party, any person who gets elected, they're going to have to cave to the demands of the people. And if they're able to get the people to demand what they want, then the politicians are going to win. But if we can show the people that they need to demand that the politicians get out of the way, then the politicians lose. They're going to have to cave. They're going to have to start scrapping all these regulations and giving people their freedom back. And that's ultimately what we want.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, that makes total sense. And it's not surprising at all to me that, those left-leaning voters that you were talking to really started to come around after you laid, that kind of stuff out. But why do you think it is that the Texas Libertarian Party and then the Libertarian Party at large, why do you think they're not adopting like a similar messaging strategy? I mean, it seems obvious to me that the way you're going about it is the way that libertarians should go about it. Why do you think there was all that pushback from the party?
I mean, honestly, I think, if the party stands for absolute freedom, then that's fine. I've really kind of come to this realization lately too, that you can't just have one organization that's going to message to all these people. And actually the way that I've started designing my outreach is to have separate organizations under separate brands, which reach out to different groups, because you have the people who are interested in healthcare. They don't care about Second Amendment rights or anything else. So you need to have these different organizations, and those organizations, like, you look at how the Democratic Party works, right? Like, what's their messaging? They don't really have one. I mean, you kind of have this general idea that like the Democrats are the party that cares for the people and blah, 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 even though most people know that's all BS. But that's not where they do most of their marketing. Like they have coalitions with like BLM, Fight for 15 is like its own organization. Medicare for All is its own thing. Like they have all these organizations. And so basically what they're doing is like, and they're all separate, right? Because they know, you got pro-life and pro-choice organizations. They know that like, if you get, if you're pushing Medicare for all and you have an organization that like all you care about is Medicare for all, and you have like a PAC or whatever, and you get all these people interested in that, it's like you can't just tell them like, oh, we're also going to be all pro-life or pro-choice, because you're going to have people in that group who are going to say like, oh, but wait a minute, we're not pro-choice. I'm pro-life. I want Medicare for all, but I'm pro-life. This organization isn't for me, and then they're going to leave. And so what they do is they actually create these very, very specific single issue organizations that are very focused on these single issues, and they don't try to just push the whole platform. But then what they do is they take that organization and they get people to rally behind just that idea, and then they tell them, hey, go vote for the Democrat or whatever. But you don't really get a lot of those. I mean, yes, you have the vote blue no matter who people, but you don't really get all the people who are supporting that Medicare for all to just jump on an entire platform. And I think that's kind of in that way, the Libertarian Party can't adopt messaging because unless it does it through these smaller organizations that have very focused targets. So, and I've heard, some of these new guys that just took over the Libertarian Party, I've heard them talk about single issue coalitions and things like that. Spike Cohen with his We Are the Power campaign, or You Are the Power campaign. I hear a lot more of this happening now, which is really interesting. And I'm hoping that we're going to start to see some more of that structure come about. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's almost like the party itself should not have messaging, and all of its messaging should be done through separate organizations that can be used to kind of corral votes towards the party itself. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to go. And ultimately, I think there's also another question of realistically, nobody, even myself with everything I'm learning about all this stuff, there's nobody knows the perfect plan. What we need to do is just try to test and work with everything that we possibly can and see what works, and then whatever works, just keep encouraging that, and then keep trying new things. And so having multiple organizations and being able to test and do all that stuff, I think is actually, one, it's decentralization, which is something libertarians are always talking about.
Right.
But I think that's really the way to go. So, I'm kind of hopeful to see what's going to come out of that.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. I think you're right. I think taking that decentralized approach to messaging is definitely the way to go. It's definitely way more effective than trying to have one big organization do the messaging from the top down. That just doesn't really seem to be the way to go. We've got to wrap up here. We've got a bit of a time limit. Just one last thing I wanted to ask you. What's next for you? You ran in the governor race here in Texas. Definitely wish that you were going to be the nominee. Ran for president in 2020. 2024 is around the corner. Are you thinking of giving it another shot, or any other future plans to run for office?
Not at this time. I'm really going to be focusing on some of these single issue initiatives, and then I've got, of course, all my for-profit ventures. I've got a cannabis company, Nug of Knowledge. We sell Delta 8 THC, which is basically it's kind of like diet weed, but it's legal in most places where regular cannabis is not. We just launched a new wine label called Blood of Tyrants, which is it's a fun play on words for red wine. And people are loving it, but it's also, both of these are a great way to kind of get into the mainstream, and we use these to educate people about, all the laws and restrictions that are in place, and the way that the government's restricting us, whether it's, our right to consume mind altering substances, or, those sorts of things. So yeah, we're using these kind of as educational mechanisms, and also as a way to kind of get our foot in the door to new audiences that are not libertarian, and kind of teach them the philosophy. So I'm involved in probably more than a dozen different projects right now. But yeah, they're all kind of connected in various ways. Yeah, the end goal is really just to bring, to bring more freedom to everybody. So that's, I don't think I'm going to be running any elections anytime soon, but we'll see what happens in the next few years.
Yeah, man. That's what did you say the name of the wine label was? Blood of Tyrants?
Blood of Tyrants. Yeah.
Man.
And you can check that out at bloodtyrants.wine. And actually, if you put in the code DAB, it'll get you a little discount. I think it's $5 off of shipping. And we do ship to Texas. We ship to 43 states. There's 7 states that don't allow us to ship there. And again, it's like it's getting involved with the wine industry and finding out how much regulation they have is just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, we ship to 43 states. So, but yeah, it's an awesome wine. And we're actually going to be, we're having a launch party this Thursday in South Austin. So if you're around, it'd be awesome if you came up.
Yeah, that would definitely be awesome. If you could, DM me the details on that, I would definitely be interested in checking that out.
Absolutely.
I've definitely got to get me some of that wine. That's right up my alley. I like wine, and I mean the name just makes it all that much better. So I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Man, well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been an awesome conversation. Talking to you and Sam Rob both in the same day has just been really great. So, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Awesome. Yeah. Anytime.
All right. Yeah. And definitely do DM me the details for that event. If I'm available, I'd love to come up there and check that out.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, rest of the weekend. Hope you have a good one.
All right. You too. I'll catch you later.
All right. I'll see you.
That was my conversation with Dan Taxation is the Behrman, former 2020 presidential candidate, former candidate for governor here in this 2022 cycle. Really had an awesome time talking to him. Really appreciated his invite to his wine label opening. I was not able to make it, but I did order a bottle of wine online myself. Would highly recommend going and getting you some. You can get some at bloodoftyrants.wine. And I'm in Tennessee for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So I'm going to meet up with my buddy Alex that I've done a podcast with before. I'm actually sitting in his house as I record this outro, and we're going to have some drinks. We're going to smoke a little bit, and we're going to record a fun episode like we always do. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out on Monday. I will get that one out on time, but hope you guys enjoyed this conversation and hope you follow for more so you don't miss them.